Hey folks, back again here on Devoted Patriots 2 channel. My name is Shannon Fox. If you don't already know, I've got a couple clips here for you. One is a video and the other is some information that ties into the video, which ends up being some pretty good news. But the bottom line of the story is it's going to have to go to the Supreme Court. And before you get lost on what I'm talking about, let me go ahead and start breaking the story down for you. Before I get into this video, let me explain. About 8 days ago, all over the news, the left-wing media, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, which is the station here that we're fixing to listen to, which is Democrat-run public broadcasting system, funded by the Democrats as well. It says it right there in their contract. But at any rate, they spout a lot of information that is nonsense. A lot of it is partisan, but sometimes they just speak the narrative that they're being fed, along with the rest of the, I guess I would say, mockingbird media, the legacy media, the CNNs, and the MSNBCs, like I said. But at any rate, the story, as of last week, all the way up to about 3-4 days ago, was that Trump is going, even though they may indict him, even though they may convict him, even though they may try to come up with new charges, some way to try to keep him off the ballot, it's not hurting his street cred at all when it comes to him winning the next election. And so they don't really know what to do. Defacing him is not working. And so they're going to try to, like Tucker Carlson said, possibly assassinate him. That's always a possibility, and I do worry about the man's safety on that one alone. So anybody that is religious, it wouldn't be probably a bad idea to pray for Donald Trump and his family and anybody that is around him that is trying to help the cause of trying to fix our country, because it's a dangerous job at this point with these rabid dog Democrats, and I said it, rabid dog Democrats. But at any rate, what is happening here is we are in a debate over the 14th Amendment being weaponized against Donald Trump, and I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to backfire, but we're trying to say in several states that they have the constitutional power, because Trump is in theory, insurrectionist, even though it's never been proven in a court of law. They should be able to take him off the ballot if they can't beat him at the box. And that's what it boils down to. I think it started in New Hampshire. Arizona, it talked about jumping on board. A couple other states had meetings and conferences about getting it done, including Florida. Now, listen close, folks. Charlie Kirk, the first state to do this, try to do this, was New Hampshire. Charlie Kirk, who is a podcaster, and he is founder of Turning Point USA. He does a lot to try to help the conservative movement. If you don't know who he is, go check him out. He's on almost all of the platforms. But Charlie Kirk took the time and effort to get his listeners activated to call the New Hampshire Congress, the senators, anybody that was could possibly be involved in having a say in the process of it going down in such an improper fashion, them actually trying to prevent Trump from being on the ballot. So he put a shout out basically to his listeners, and the phone started ringing, and the pressure got so bad that New Hampshire come out and made a formal statement saying, I don't think it was the governor, I think it was the Secretary of State, come out and said, no, we have no intentions at this point to try to pursue the rumor that we're going to go after Trump in such a way to try to take him off the ballot. And so I thought, oh, well, that's good news. It may not be a permanent piece of information, but that's good news. And then the next thing you know, I hear Florida's trying to do it, Arizona's trying to do it, and I thought, how many states are going to try to say that Trump tried to contest the election, especially these swing states? And then they're going to try to say, well, then Trump doesn't deserve to be on the ballot, under the fact that somewhere in the 14th Amendment it says if you are an insurrectionist or you give aid or assistance to an insurrectionist or someone who tried to overthrow the country, then you don't qualify to be on the ballot for any political office, including president. And that's part of the 14th Amendment they are trying to weaponize against Trump, if you don't already know. But this PBS video here, I cut out the parts of the video where they're basically trying to talk shit about Trump. We don't need to hear that. But at least the informative part where this commentator is asking this expert, or seems like a legal expert, about it anyway, maybe a constitutional expert. But after that, I've also got some really good news about what is happening so far. But the bottom line of this whole situation comes down to one thing, which is yet to be done, even with the wins we're getting on the way, and that is the fact that this case is going to have to go before the Supreme Court with one state or another, whichever one gets it to that point, and then it'll be law of the land, whatever the Supreme Court decides for a final ruling, and then there will be no contesting it from that point forward, because this is going to get appealed, guaranteed, no matter what the ruling is on this in several different states. But we do have a win. If you just stick around to the end, I'll read you a little bit of what is going on in a couple of these states that have been trying to, even Florida, trying to kick Trump off the ballot. Do you believe that crap? So stick around, folks. Pretty informative stuff. I've been curious about this. I've listened to Alan Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley, Mark Levin, some of the people that really have the knowledge, lawyers, constitutionalists that would know better than us what legal rights Trump has in the situation where they're trying to railroad him. Well, let's go ahead and get into this first video, folks, and then we'll jump right over to something where I got to read you a little bit of great news.
It comes down to the 14th Amendment, a Civil War candidates who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. A belief that Trump violated that standard with his actions on and before January 6th is gaining traction among his opponents on the campaign trail and in Congress.
Obviously, I'm not going to support somebody who's been convicted of a serious felony or who is disqualified under our Constitution.
I agree with the conservative Federalist Society law professors who are out there saying that Donald Trump is disqualified, just as if he were running and not a born U.S. citizen, or if he were running and he were 24 years old.
And this week, a long-shot candidate in the New Hampshire GOP primary filed a lawsuit to keep Trump off the ballot, testing this theory. What does this all mean for the next election and our legal system? To explain, I'm joined by Ned Foley. He's the director of election law at Ohio State University's Moritz College of Law. Ned, thank you so much for joining. The conservative legal scholars who wrote a paper on this say that once they dug into the actual question, they determined that former President Trump is disqualified under the 14th Amendment. Has this theory ever been tested before?
Well, not in our lifetimes. Because it's a Civil War provision in the Constitution, there was some litigation around this clause back in the 19th century. But and it has been tested not for a presidential election, but for lower offices. For example, in New Mexico, a county clerk was removed because he was someone who actually had been at the Capitol on January 6th. So, but in terms of a presidential election, of the kind of litigation that we're seeing now, no, it's untested in that context.
And in New Hampshire, a long-shot candidate for the Republican presidential nomination is suing to keep Trump off the ballot there. How likely is that to succeed?
Well, I think this particular lawsuit is unlikely to succeed for technical reasons of procedure. But this isn't going to be the only lawsuit of its type. Already some other ones have been filed. There's one in Florida and elsewhere. And so I think around the country, we're going to see this because every state has its own rules for putting candidates on the ballot. And so this could come up in each and every state. And obviously, President Trump seeks to be a candidate in all the states around the country. I think it's important that this issue be decided before the November 2024 election so that it doesn't come up afterwards. So all you need is one of these initial lawsuits to make it to the U.S. Supreme Court to get a definite resolution of the issue.
Ned, you're right that secretaries of state could bring a case themselves. Voters could pressure for a case to be brought, and it's already under discussion in some states like Arizona and Michigan, swing states, where those secretaries of state are seeking legal advice about where this could lead. So how would those cases differentiate from this New Hampshire one?
We're going to see this in different variations. Secretaries of states and other election officials, because they're government officials responsible for the ballots.
You see what they're doing here. They didn't like being questioned in 2020. They didn't like the pressure of the people finding out from the podcasters and from the conservative news media that there was shenanigans allegedly going on. And so the Secretary of States, the Attorney Generals, the governors, the Senate, the Congress, the election commissioners, commission folk, anybody involved in the whole people picking process of anybody that is of any stature in the political Now, this guy here is definitely not a Trump supporter, but he is at least trying to be honest with the situation. He says there is no merit to this, but every state has their own set of rules, and we're just going to have to see how this goes. But the final result will be the fact of the matter is it comes down to the Supreme Court will be the final say-so on this. So the first case that doesn't get shot down, that makes it all the way to the Supreme Court, will be the deciding factor for the entire nation. But we do have some information on a federal case ruling on this, so stick around to the end, folks, and we'll get to that here shortly.
They have their own special access to courts, but it all depends on the content of state laws. And the state laws can vary in each and every state about whether they give permission for this kind of lawsuit. So even if the Secretary of State would like to pursue it, that's not enough. There has to be a state statute written by the state legislature that authorizes this kind of lawsuit.
Ned, do the criminal indictments brought forward by the Justice Department or by Fulton County in Georgia impact the potential lawsuits here under the 14th Amendment?
No, they're separate. Those are criminal trials under different criminal laws that Congress has passed or the state of Georgia has passed. And even if former President Trump were convicted under those prosecutions, they would not disqualify him from running as a candidate.
That's all I need to hear, folks, right there. Even if they did convict Trump of any of these nefarious BS alleged crimes, it doesn't stop Trump from running, doesn't disqualify him in any kind of way from becoming the president. So all in all, his beliefs are, even though he's not a Trump supporter, is it's not going to work. He does go on further to say, like I said, Supreme Court will have the final say on this. First state to make it that far through the appeals court, if any of them get that far, will be the deciding factor on all this. But Supreme Court, I can't imagine, with us having a 6-3 majority, knocking this down, because this is, as far as I'm concerned, super unconstitutional, the things they're trying to do, including the disqualification bullshit. Now let's go ahead and get into the Gateway Pundit article. I wanted to read to you a little bit of good news. Sorry this video is so long, but this is good stuff. It says federal judge dismisses case trying to keep Trump off the ballot in 2024. A federal judge on Friday dismissed a lawsuit filed by a Florida lawyer who claimed Trump should be banned from the 2024 ballot for inciting an insurrection. The legal theory is based on Section 3 of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which states public officials who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the state, the U.S. or the United States, may be disqualified from public office. Trump has not been charged with engaging in insurrection or rebellion against the United States at this point, and no court of law hasn't even been charged with any of this stuff. But at any rate, that's what they're going with. It says Judge Robin Rosenberg, a U.S. District Judge from the Southern District of Florida, ruled that the attorney Lawrence Copeland lacked standing for bringing the lawsuit. Plaintiffs lacked standing to challenge the defendant's qualifications for seeking the presidency. He was also this judge was an Obama appointee, but he still sided with Trump. That's actually a little surprising, but glad to see it. He filed a week ago questioned Trump's ability to appear on the Florida primary ballot next year, basically trying to prevent him from being on the ticket. It says after this judge's swift dismissal of the case, Robin Rosenberg, who was appointed to the bench by President Barack Obama, did not determine the 14th Amendment applicable in Trump's particular case. Instead, Rosenberg ruled that the plaintiffs, Boynton Beach attorney Lawrence Kaplan and two others, lacked standing to bring the challenge. Like I said, awesome news. Arizona Democrat Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and this is Arizona, exact same scenario. They're trying to throw it at Trump over the exact same complaints. It says Arizona Democrat Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and he's the cartel lawyer that became Secretary of State, earlier this week confirmed he does not have the authority to bar Trump from the ballot, because less than a week ago there was rumor that Katie Hobbs was going to try to do the same thing to Trump, and so that's been cleared up. So that's one more state out of the way. That's good to hear. It says now the Arizona Supreme Court said that because there is no statutory process in the federal law to enforce Section 3 of Article 3 of Amendment 14, you can't enforce it, Fontes said on the Gaggle podcast by Arizona Republic. Fontes says he's done checked into this, and it is not a possibility, even though they tried. Meanwhile, New Hampshire's Rhino Secretary of State and Attorney General are also reviewing the legal theory that Trump cannot run for president. So 2 out of 3 have already been shot down of the 3 that have stepped up, 3 states that have stepped up and tried this bullshit against Trump. That's all I got for you folks, but I just wanted to let you know that's 2 out of 3 wins, and New Hampshire is catching a lot of pressure from Charlie Kirk's show, and they've already made a statement saying that they are not going to go after Trump, but they haven't made a public statement saying that yet, but it was confirmed through, I believe, a phone call that Charlie Kirk personally made to him. Go check out his show if you haven't heard of Charlie Kirk before. Really informative, Christian, great podcaster, and he gets the inside scoop a lot of times. That's one of the reasons I follow him among many other big names in this business. Like, subscribe, and share. Devoted Patriots. Everybody have a great day. Hope you enjoyed. Over and out.